Hey guys, Redneck Mini 14 here. Today I'm going to perform my first test for a brush gun. And this is the setup I have. I just have a target stapled to an Amazon box. Probably about 10 yards or so in front of it, I have this pile of brush from tree branches that we cut down. And I don't know, this may be too much or not enough or what, but I don't think it's too much more than what would be realistic for a brush gun to handle. So I'm going to be shooting from all the way back there. I don't know, that's probably 25-30 yards between the UTV and the brush pile, and then up to the target there. So I don't know, probably not quite 50 yards, but close enough. I don't have anything to measure with. Of course, the gun we're going to be using is the Henry X model 360 Buckhammer. This is the gun that I bought to be my designated brush gun. We'll see how this test goes, and I might try it with a 4570 in the future, because I'm sure a 4570 would be a much better option, but this is kind of like a nice middle of the road caliber, being 35, 36 caliber between a 30 caliber and a 45 caliber. The ammo that we're going to be shooting today is Federal PowerShock 180 and 200 grain, and the Federal Hammer Down 220 grain. Now, I am pretty sure the 180 grain is not going to perform as well as the 200 grain, but I'm not 100% sure if the 220 grain, given the geometric shape of the actual bullet, if that's going to perform better or worse than the 200 grain. We will find out, and who knows, this whole experiment might just be a complete fail and they might all perform poorly, but only time will tell. Being that the target is so low to the ground, I'm actually going to have to sit on the ground because I don't really have anything to elevate it, and I don't have enough brush to make a huge brush pile. But we're going to see how this goes just sitting on the ground. We're going to start off with 3 rounds of 180 grain Federal PowerShock. Well, I saw some branches, well, leaves, falling off of the tree branch significantly higher than where the target is. So I'm going to say that at least one of those rounds tumbled. Let's find out. Well, given that I can't really see the target from back there, I guess that's not too bad. I do have 2 rounds on the paper. Oh, I have 3 rounds on the one of them's on the cardboard. So I bet what happened was that 3rd round probably bounced off the ground, or maybe even just some dirt bounced up and knocked some leaves off. So that's actually kind of a success, I'd say. I mean, obviously you wouldn't want to be shooting through something that thick to hit your target, because you want to positively identify your target, but just by shooting through this little bit of brush pile here, it seems like all 3 of them stayed stable. So that's actually pretty good. Alright, so this time around I actually added a bunch more brush to try and make it a little more unfair for the 200 grain and the 220 grain bullets. Maybe it'll make them fail, maybe it won't, I don't know. But I really cannot see that target. I mean, I just see a wall of leaves, basically. And again, this is what you don't want when you're hunting, so if this gun and this round can pass this test, you can pretty much guarantee that you'll be able to have the bullet stabilize in anything realistic when you're actually hunting. So let's see how the 200 grain Power Shock does against this brush pile. Let's see how it did. Well, looks like we got a couple keyholes there. I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I do see 6 holes on the cardboard here. I can't remember which holes were already there. Well, I guess it was this one, and this one. So looks like all 3 of those probably tumbled a bit, which is okay because, like I said, this is a not so realistic example of what you would see in the woods. And the first time around, when it was half this size, the 180 grains actually went through no problem. And even that was not realistic, so I would say that a 200 grain would do just fine in a realistic situation. Now, if I was using a 4570 or 444 Marlin, I would say that those would probably stand a better chance of zipping through this and going in there no problem, no tumbling or anything like that. But either way, I'm satisfied with the outcome because, like I said before, I added all the extra brush, the 180 grains, which would be the least likely to stabilize out of the 3, did okay. So if they did okay, then I would say all 3 of them would be okay in a realistic hunting situation. But let's just see what the 220 grains do, just for S's and G's. Alright, so just so everybody knows what I mean when the geometric shape of the 220 grain bullet is different than the other 2. This is the 220 grain bullet, and as you can see, it's a little pointier than, say, so the one in the middle is the 200 grain, and the one on my left, your right, is the 180 grain, and the one all the way on the other side is the 220 grain. So as you can see, it's a little more pointier than the 200 grain, and even a little more pointier than the 180 grain. And the shape of the bullet does have a lot to do with whether or not a bullet will tumble or not when going through brush. So it's basically two key factors. You have the shape of the bullet. Typically the more round or blunt face that the bullet is on the nose, it's more likely to go through brush, and the heavier the bullet. So if you have say a 180 grain versus a 200 grain, and they're both fairly rounded or blunt faced, the 200 grain probably has the better likelihood that it will stabilize going through brush over the 180 grain. Now, like I said, when I did the 180 grain, I didn't have as much brush as when I did the 200 grain, so it wasn't really a fair comparison there. I have no doubt that the 200 grain would have still stabilized through the first brush pile, and I also have no doubt that the 180 grain would not stabilize through the second brush pile. So I don't really feel the need to go back and redo that test, but I do want to see what the 220 grain Federal Hammer Down does on this test. Might have went a little left on that last one, so the last one might not have even hit the box. It's hard to tell from here, but let's see what it did. Oh yeah, we got some definite keyholing here. So one of these two on the far left here would have been my last shot, which I thought probably didn't hit the target, but I do have 9 holes here and I took 9 shots, so I can't remember exactly, but I think one of these in the green, probably that one there, is one of the other ones. So like I said, I wasn't so sure about this round because of the shape of the bullet. Now if it was more the shape of the 200 grain, where it was more rounded and not so pointy, it probably would do better. But again, this is a pretty big brush pile I'm shooting through, not overly realistic. And like I said, and earlier on, the 180 grains did good in the first brush pile, so I have no doubt that the 200 grains would do good in the first brush pile. Not so sure about the 220 grains, so I might revisit this topic and I might bring out my 4570 just to see how it performs in the same conditions that this performs in. So let me know if you want to see that in the future, and that's all I got for this video. Alright guys, after reviewing the footage, I think maybe I wasn't quite fair with the 200 grains because, they were a little larger holes, but they weren't necessarily oblong holes. So maybe it was just that the bullets expanded a little bit after hitting the brush, but they were still stable, or at least somewhat stable, compared to the 220 grain bullets. So I'm not 100% satisfied with how I ended the test, so probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to revisit the test with at least those 3 rounds in the future, but I'll probably also bring out some other guns. Definitely the 4570. I do have a 45 Colt Henry. That would be a good one to try if I can get some decent hunting ammo to try with it. I also have a 44 Magnum. I've got a couple of different 30-30s. And, we can take all these guns out, test them out, maybe in a few different videos, and put them head to head or try different rounds in each gun, see which round works the best as a brush gun or a brush gun caliber. So, we can try it out. We can also try out some, just put them, compare them against guns that are not traditionally brush guns, like, say, 223, 308, 30-06, 7.62x39. I even have a 303 British. I could try that one too. I got a bunch of different guns we can try. I don't have, every single gun and caliber out there, but among all the different guns that I have, and if you want to go back and look at the different guns I have and make any suggestions on what you would like to see, let me know. But otherwise, I will revisit this topic in the future. How long in the future, I have no idea, but I definitely want to revisit the 360 Buckhammer brush gun testing. I definitely want to put it head to head with the 4570 and just, see what other guns I would like to try out, see what's the best brush gun, or if any of them are even decent brush guns. I don't know. I would definitely say that the 4570, out of all the guns that I have, is probably the best brush gun, aside from maybe a shotgun slug. But hunting with shotguns is not exactly the easiest thing in the world to do. I'd much rather use a rifle if I can get away with it. So that's all I have.
Hey, before I go, I just thought I'd remind everybody that I do have a second channel called Redneck Off the Range. Over there, I post most of my non-gun related content, so whether it's a video on my new tractor, my power tools, my projects that I'm working on, maybe wild game recipes, or just a random vlog, I post all of this kind of content over on my secondary channel. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go check it out, Redneck Off the Range. But that's all for this video, so subscribe to my channel, like me on Facebook. I'm Redneck Mini 14, and until next time, be safe.